All right, this video is so amazing. It is filled with so much amazing information. The information keeps changing because of the various prophetic signs that God provided for us on May 4th. But make sure you go through the whole video. It'll just keep changing and the information will just keep being amazing. And very, very important and necessary. This is a very important video. All right, welcome to part 3 of this truly amazing and very important video series, the 54th Massachusetts Regiment video series. And as I mentioned in part 1 and 2, part 3 will regard the signs that occurred on the date 5/4, May 4th, 2023. And the date 5/4 hints at the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. And this was known ahead of time, and the signs on 5/4 confirmed the prior analysis, which is amazing in itself. But of course, what God was communicating in the signs themselves are what is amazing as well. So I'm just going to read the emails that I wrote at the time. This would be the day after. All right, I'm actually going to begin with an email that I wrote in October. There was one particular sign that wasn't learned about until October, and so I, as you can see here, composed this email on October 27th. And as I wrote, here is the explosion sign we were expecting on May 4th. All right, so among many other signs, which I'll explain in a minute, that are so amazing and profound and important, one was missing, and that was an explosion sign, because as was explained, God was pointing to this date, May 4th, as being a step in the trail of signs that is leading to the predicted explosion in New York City. And so you would figure that there would be an explosion sign on May 4th. And it was finally learned in October. Okay, so here is the explosion sign we were expecting on May 4th. And I'm referring to this link right here. This was the day of the 4 boys that are proud were convicted, of the 6th day of the first month thing. The 4th inmate named Harris was captured next to the I-55. The 4th house, which hinted at 54, by the way, the 4th inmate next to the I-55. And so the 4th horse in 5 days, as was mentioned earlier. No, I haven't mentioned that yet. That's in this video. Okay, so on this day, again, I'm saying again to the people I'm writing to, I'm reminding them of the other signs, some of the other signs. In 5 days, there was reported 4 horse deaths at the Kentucky Derby. It was the day of the 44-year-old leader of 44 million. I'm referring to Zelensky, who turned 44 just before the Russia-Ukraine war began, when his nation was made up of 44 million people. And on this day, he made a surprise visit to the International Criminal Court, which is relevant because this will be used to condemn Israel soon, etc. And this is all Antichrist symbolism. Zelensky is because the Antichrist is the 44th president. And so what I am making the point, and all of these signs involving the number 4, as I just mentioned, 4 horses, 44-year-old of 44 million, 4th inmate, 4 boys that are proud. All of these signs were 4 times 4 days after the 4-story car park collapsed, in which 4 out of 5 people injured went to the hospital. 4 sheriff's cars were in the collapse, and that occurred just after 4 p.m. in the financial district, close to when the financial district, or rather Wall Street, or the stock exchange, closes at 4 p.m. Okay, so all of these 4s. Okay, and so that's relevant because in the explosion sign we received on the date 5/4, it was 4 people that were injured and went to the hospital. And it occurred at 4 a.m., this explosion. And so that right there confirms the relevance of this prophetic sign, without a doubt. Not only were we expecting an explosion, however explosions happen, but this confirms it. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And so what I am saying is the 4 people injured that went to the hospital in the explosion at 4 a.m. on this date 5/4, in which we had all of these other signs involving the number 4, is 100% confirmation that this is the prophetic sign, the prophetic explosion we were expecting on this date. Okay. The facility was evacuated, which is more confirmation because we are, and has been shown through God's signs, these explosions are coming in conjunction with evacuation symbolism. All right. And so the facility where the explosion was evacuated, which makes this more relevant. And the main street was shut down due to concern over toxic gas. This is absolutely astounding because this is exactly what the signs prior to this had been already communicating and are still communicating, is that we are expecting an evacuation from Manhattan Island due to the toxicity from the dirty bomb explosion. And that's what we received on this May 4th date. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection was involved. This gives us our toxic explosion we expected prior to this date. The street was shut down for 9 hours, and this was in the 27th state. The number 9 is the most important number in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. As from the Bible, the number 9 symbolizes God's judgment, and that's why this street was shut down for 9 hours, and it was in the 27th state because 27 is 9 plus 9 plus 9. This is more confirmation that this is the warning of judgment sign we expected on this date. The Air Liquide in French, facility makes specialty gases for computer chips. The company Air Liquide specializes in gases for the health industry. This is perfect symbolism for the date 5/4, in which hints at the 54th Massachusetts Regiment and unfair pay, which is symbolism for the coming oppressive minority laws involving programmable digital currency. Okay, and so I'm writing this to the people that know what I'm talking about. However, I'm sure I have explained by this point in the 54th Massachusetts Regiment videos the significance of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, and it is all about hinting at the coming programmable digital currency that will be used to enforce the mark of the Antichrist through rationed food, and the rationing of food to only those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist will be permitted to use the programmable digital currency. And that's why this Air Liquide facility makes gases for computer chips and the health industry. Because, of course, the mark of the Antichrist is the thing, you know what I'm talking about, the thing that is part of health. Right? So that's why this Air Liquide, the symbolism in the Air Liquide story here of this explosion. The address of the facility is 17526 High Springs, Main Street. The number sums to 21. Okay, this is, if you add 1 plus 7 plus 5 plus 2 plus 6, it equals 21. And this is astounding beyond words because the knowledge of this date ahead of time was first learned or realized because of it being 21 days after the 21-year-old document leaker in Massachusetts, whose name means toxic. the guy named Tahara, right? As we were talking about, the sign on April 13th, his arrest, the document leaker, the big story about this guy when he was arrested was that he was 21. And how in the world could a 21-year-old have access to these highly classified documents, et cetera, et cetera? That was the story, but it was in Massachusetts. And it pointed to 21 days later to the date 5/4, which hints at the 54th Massachusetts Regiment and the coming toxic dirty bomb, and that's why his last name is meaning toxic in Latin. Anyway, this toxic explosion at this address that adds up to 21 was 21 days after the 21-year-old document leaker whose name means toxic. High Springs is part of the name of the street, and I think that's the name of the town as well, means high place, which in Hebrew means Bama, as in Barack Obama. And this is why 4 people were injured at 4 a.m. in High Springs. It hints at the 44th president, Obama. And by the way, it is Obama, as in dirty bomb. But the reason there's the significance of high places, because in the Bible, the high places are a euphemism for the false religious worship that the Jews would do on the tops of mountains. Furthermore, Jesus said that he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven, and in the Bible, the high place is a metaphor for heaven, as, for example, it is said that Lucifer fell from the high place, and Barak in Hebrew means lightning, and O in Aramaic, the language Jesus would have spoken, is from, and so Barack Obama means lightning from heaven. Either Jesus didn't know what he was saying when he said this, or he knew that there would be a famous president named Barack Obama and said this anyway, knowing that it would confuse us, or he was revealing the identity of the Antichrist. And obviously the latter option is the only one that makes any sense. This chemical plant explosion and evacuation due to a toxic gas is 212 days before the predicted explosion and evacuation in the area code 212. On the date 12/2, which outside of the US is written as 212, which hints at 212, the area code, and it will be predicted to be 212 days after this chemical plant and evacuation due to toxic gas. All right, there was another very, very important explosion sign on May 4th. This wasn't learned until today, and today is January 9th, 2024. It should have been known. It was staring at me in the face all of this time because I was using an image from Netflix regarding the premiere date for their movie 3 Mile, titled Meltdown 3 Mile Island. And it was May 4th in the image. And I was using it in videos for the thumbnail, for example, for the 3 Mile Island video. I do not know how I missed this. Or, you know what is even equally likely is that I knew this and it's been so long since May 4th that I forgot that I knew it. Well, anyway, so the movie Meltdown 3 Mile Island that was released on Netflix on May 4th is the big sign. It is the big confirmation for this trail of signs leading to the predicted date that there will either be a dirty bomb or plural 2 dirty bombs or a suitcase nuke in Manhattan, which is predicted to be on February 3rd. Now, 3 Mile Island, I made a video titled 3 Mile Island, but it is about so many other things. It is actually, as you probably know by now, if you've watched any number of videos on this channel regarding this prediction for the dirty bomb, it is, as I have said in many other videos, one of the top 5 or so videos that you need to watch regarding this prediction. Okay, so I'm not, just because I'm going to explain a tiny fraction of the 3 Mile Island connection and prophetic sign does not mean that you can skip that video. So 3 Mile Island on March 28th, 1979 was a disaster at the nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania on 3 Mile Island, and there was an evacuation. And this is a major prophetic sign from God that is hinting at the evacuation from Manhattan Island due to a dirty bomb, which is made of nuclear material, or a suitcase nuke. And the evacuation from 3 Mile Island was because of nuclear material. It is stunning. Well, what is stunning, actually, is the prophetic sign we received, as explained in the 3 Mile Island video, on the 44th anniversary, March 28th, 2023, which was the chocolate factory explosion in Pennsylvania. But there's more that needs to be explained, of course. But I mean regarding how it connects to March 28th, because the explosion was on March 24th. But I will explain in the video how there was a prophetic sign related to this, the NTSB report, to be precise, on March 28th, the 44th anniversary. And there's lots more to what happened on March 28th that's related. Well, March 28th, 2023 is 44 weeks and 4 days to the date it is predicted that there will be nuclear material in an explosion and then an evacuation from Manhattan Island. And so, from the 3 Mile Island nuclear material mishap or accident and evacuation, it is 44 years to March 28th, 2023, and then 44 weeks and 4 days. So 44 years and then 44 weeks and 4 days to the date February 3rd, which is 2-3, which hints at 23. So 44 weeks and 44 years and then 44 weeks and 4 days hints at the number 44. And the date 2-3, which is where these connections lead to, hints at 23. This is a pairing of 23 and 44. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And one simple way in which he would provide a second witness for us, if we think about it, would be through pairing certain numbers together, such as 23 and 44. And the reason for this is because the Antichrist is the 44th president, who is the basketball president who wore jersey 23 when he played basketball in high school. Okay, and so that is why we have, from the 3 Mile Island, 44 years and then 44 weeks and 4 days to the date 2-3, which hints at 23, the end of the trail of signs. It is astounding beyond words. Okay, so I just thought I would throw that in there to support the fact that one of the amazing prophetic signs that we received on May 4th, 5-4, which hints at the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, is this premiere, the release of the movie Meltdown 3 Mile Island on Netflix. There you have it. And first, let's look at the trail of signs leading to the predicted dirty bomb. It was believed that 5-4 would be the date for this event, and there was plenty of amazing confirmation for this. It is now clearer in that 5-4 was a date that the trail of signs leading to Israel bombing Iran and Damascus also passed through. Okay, so we've got two separate themes that God is communicating through different trails of signs, and they overlapped on this 5-4 date, which I think what I'm getting at here, because again, this was 4 months ago. I think what I'm getting at here is that this was unexpected prior to 5-4, May 4th. The nuclear weapons theme in the New York City dirty bomb and Israel-Iran overlaps in the signs. In fact, Israel will nuke Damascus 4 times 4 days later, and the dirty bomb will be 4 times 4 weeks later. All right, so there were more steps in the trails of signs. I don't want to get into that. They were all, this analysis is true, and that's explained in the other videos. Which is why, on this date we are talking about, 5-4, the 44-year-old leader, the first Jewish leader of Ukraine, that was a country that was made up of 44 million. So this is shorthand for that. The people that I'm writing to are familiar with the things that I talk about. What I'm speaking about is how, right before the beginning of the Ukraine-Russia war, Zelensky, the first Jewish leader of Ukraine, had just turned 44, right before the beginning of the war. And at the beginning of the war, his nation was made up of 44 million people. And this is because, as I'm saying here, Zelensky is Antichrist Obama symbolism, the 44th president. And this guy, the 44-year-old of 44 million, made a surprise visit on this 5-4 date to the ICC, the International Criminal Court. More on this in a minute. Okay. If I don't get into it as much as I should later, I'll just say now, the International Criminal Court was set up for the purpose of prosecuting war crimes, and this court will gang up on Israel after it is predicted that Israel will bomb Iran and nuke Damascus. Long story short. And this effort, this movement by the world to gang up on Israel will be led by the Antichrist, the 44th president, who is well known for not being a friend of Israel. More on this in a minute. I should say it is well known by people that are informed. Liberals, the blue team, are not informed. They are largely ignorant about most things. And so this is why liberal Jewish people vote Democrat. That's another story. So more on this in a minute. As well, it seemed that April 13th, should have been the date, and therefore the confirmations on 4/13 for adding 21 days, and what I'm referring to specifically, among other things, is the arrest of the 21-year-old document leaker in Massachusetts, which was 21 days before 5-4, which hints at the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. Okay, and so what I'm saying here is, and therefore the confirmations on April 13th for adding 21 days to reach 5-4 resulted in the conclusion for the dirty bomb to be on 5-4, which was more than a reasonable conclusion. And furthermore, God's signs, the signs that occurred on this date, the trail of signs that lead and go through May 4th, confirm that conclusion. However, I should have looked more carefully at the Boston Bruins' final season points total of 133 points, made in their prophetic 5-4 win on Montreal Island in their final game of their prophetic season. I had assumed that it was simply confirmation for the Tampa Bay-Boston baseball game and the third team to win their first 13 games in the history of baseball. Okay, 13 games, third team to do so, hints at 133. 133 would hint at 3-13. As well, the score in the game was 3-9. which hinted at 39, which equals 3 times 13. It turns out that this was the other way around. This confirmed the 133 points. In other words, the third team to win 13 games, their first 13 games, also hinted at adding 133 days. And the reason I should have known this is that I already knew that 133 days equals 19 weeks. That said, this has procured further insight into 19 weeks, and it is now clear that 19 weeks is also prophetic because it hints at 3 and 13. And 3 divided by 13 equals 0.230, the number of the Antichrist, the basketball president that wore jersey number 23 when he played basketball in high school. 19 weeks after April 13th is April 24th. April 24th hints at 24 divided by 8 equals 3, and 3 eighths. In other words, 888, which is the numeric value of the name Jesus in Greek gematria. Greek letters are also numbers, and the name Jesus in Greek gematria equals 888. Okay, so that's what's hinted at with the date 8/24, August 24th. So August 24th will be 144 hours, which is 6 days, after Trump's death on August 18th. And 8 times 18 equals 144. This seems just as would be expected. Trump's death will be a trumpet of judgment. Both events will be Manhattan symbolism. Trump is from Manhattan. Trump's death will be 188 days to February 22nd, 2024, the predicted date of the solar flare, and which will trigger the eruption on Yellowstone, and many other confirmations. Okay, so again, this was written in early May. A lot of more understanding regarding God's true big picture of signs has been learned since then. So first of all, it is now known that the trail of signs for Trump's death leads to November 7th. Okay, to get that out of the way first. Now this date here is very, very important. This August 24th date, which I just said connected to Trump in early May, I said that. This date was the day that Trump was arrested for his 4th indictment in the 4th state, which is another hint at 44. And again, the signs on this date, 133 days earlier, were all about the number 44. And I'm just getting started. It was the surprise visit of the 44-year-old of 44 million to the International Criminal Court. Okay, so this date is connected to, from May 4th, as I just explained. This date in turn connects with 54 days to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. And that is astounding, and that was learned not too long after this early May email was composed. And I had wondered a couple of things. Why God was pointing to this date. It was learned shortly after this that God was pointing to the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash on April 24th. And then at some point in, I think, late June or early July, it was realized, probably in June, that it was realized that this would be a step in the trail of signs leading to her death in a plane crash, which would be 54 days later. So long before the date came and went, it was realized that it would only be a step, but it was definitely going to be a step. In other words, a date with clear and relevant signs on the date, and that her death would be on October 17th, 54 days later. And so I had been wondering why the 54 days, How does that connect? How does her death in a plane crash connect to the 54th Massachusetts Regiment? And also, the other thing that I had been wondering was how the Russian general named Wagner tied into all of this. Because it was clear, or it seemed obvious to me, that the involvement of this attempted coup by the general named Wagner in Russia was a prophetic sign that was pointing to the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. Because the 54th Massachusetts Regiment is famous for its valiant effort in the battle at Fort Wagner. Again, the 54th Massachusetts Regiment was the first black regiment, and the involvement of black soldiers in the Civil War altered the outcome of the Civil War. It changed the war. It was pivotal. It was a pivotal time. It was a pivotal event in the outcome of the war. Sorry, I just ate dinner and my mind is a little slow, but I have to get this video done. There's so much other work to do. I have to produce these videos even if I've got food coma, is what they call it, right? When you've just finished dinner, but it's got to be done. So I'm a little bit slow. I'm going to stumble. I'm going to slur. I'm going to stutter, but that's just because of the nature of what my nature in general, but also the fact that I've got food coma. Okay, I'm just trying to work through the fact that I just ate dinner. Okay, so, but this is important. This is an important video, and I should be able to get this done. So what I'm getting at here, there was two things that I was curious about. This 8/24 date, which, as I just explained, connected to May 4th, which is why I'm talking about it in this video. And the two questions I had, which I didn't realize were related, was how does Wagner connect into God's big picture of signs regarding the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, and why the 54 days from August 24th to the date that Harris will die in a plane crash? Well, it turned out that this was the day that Wagner died in a plane crash. He actually died the night before, but the first official statement from the state of Russia, which was a statement by Putin, which makes it more prophetic, was on August 24th. That confirmed that Wagner had died in the plane crash. And this date was known since May, as you can see in this email. If I fail to prove that, you can see right here, May 5th was the date that it was composed. This August 24th date was known since May, early May, to be a step on the trail leading to the death in a plane crash of Kamala Harris. And it's 54 days from this date to her plane crash. And 54 hints at the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, which is famous for its Fort Wagner battle. And then this was the day that Wagner died in a plane crash. It's absolutely amazing. And it confirms all of the analysis. Okay? So now bear in mind again that this was written in early May. I'm going to do my best to interject and update you on the understanding that has come since early May when I composed this email. August 24th will be 4 times 4 weeks exactly after May 4th. Okay, so there you go. God's signs overlap with each other. It's a task to discern when they overlap, how to differentiate the various themes that God is leading to. The prediction for the dirty bomb, the prediction for Kamala Harris in a plane crash, the prediction for Israel bombing Iran and Damascus, the prediction for Obama becoming the president again, and on and on. Okay? So anyway, this date here, August 24th, was exactly 4 times 4 weeks after the date May 4th. And again, this was the day that the 44-year-old of 44 million made the surprise visit to the International Criminal Court. Now, as I had been realizing before May 4th, The date itself is a pairing of 9 and 23. And if I haven't said it yet in this video, which I haven't, which I say it all the time though, the way in which God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel, is through the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And one simple way in which he would provide second witnesses, if you think about it, would be through pairing certain numbers together, such as 9 and 23. The number 9 is the most important number in God's signs, as from the Bible it symbolizes God's judgment. The number 23 is the 9th prime number. The Antichrist became president in 2009 and will become the president again in 2023. And the basketball president wore jersey number 23 when he played basketball in high school. Okay, so there we go. 5/4, May 4th, was in turn 44 days after the Japan World Baseball Championship sign. Okay, the 44-year-old of 44 million Ukraine made a surprise visit to the International Criminal Court on May 4th, which confirms these connections in a big way, exclamation mark. The inaugural session of the International Criminal Court was exactly 18 months after the World Trade Center was destroyed on 9/11. Okay? The UN adopted the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court on July 17th, 1998. Exactly 19 years, which symbolizes perfect judgment. 9 judgment, 10 perfect order. Why 19? Before the extremely prophetic July 17th, 2017 date, when Jews were able to openly pray on the Temple Mount for the first time for one day after the terrorism on the Temple Mount a few days earlier. This was exactly 49 biblical years after the decree to rebuild Jerusalem on April 1st, 1969, fulfilling the parallel between Suleiman the Magnificent's decree in 1535 and the 70 weeks prophecy. This is explained more in the absolute must-watch, I think I call it the 70 weeks prophecy video, or I think I titled it Israel, the Bible prophecy predicts Israel will bomb Iran. Make sure you watch that foundational, most important video. The most important central prophecy in the Bible is the 70 weeks prophecy. And like I'm saying here, God has demonstrated a parallel with that, which is confirmation. And anyway, it's leading to the return of Christ. Make sure you watch the video. That's all I'm going to say. Leaving the 70th 7-year period that symbolically began on July 17th, 2017. And by the way, once the prediction comes to pass, you should know that you should watch every single minute of every video on this channel, obviously. Okay, so this was one of the many a few different symbolic beginnings of the final 7-year period that is described in the 70 weeks prophecy. Okay, there's way more to this that I explained in the Is Joshua the Key to Revelation video. Now, I made that video in 2019, and I included this video clip, I believe, in the Bible prophecy predicts Israel will bomb Iran video. So watch the Bible prophecy predicts Israel will bomb Iran video. Okay. And it will be on October 9th, by the way. That's the prediction. Okay, 7 nations, including Israel, voted against the treaty at the conference in Rome, this is Antichrist. Rome is Antichrist symbolism. The Mystery Babylon in Bible prophecy is most clearly and indisputably Rome. And the first Antichrist is the Roman Pope. Okay? Anyway, Israel's opposition to the treaty stemmed from the inclusion in the list of war crimes, quote, the action of transferring population into occupied territory, unquote. I have to conclude that what the Lord is saying with these signs on May 4th is that the world is going to come down on Israel and charge it with war crimes after it nukes Damascus 4 times 4 days later. Now, 4 times 4 days after this date, May 4th, was May 20th. And it wasn't known at this time that the G7 summit in Hiroshima would be taking place, but that summit was a 3-day summit. But May 20th, 4 times 4 days after May 4th, was the prophetic date when the 44-year-old of 44 million made a surprise visit to the G7 summit in Hiroshima. And Hiroshima, because it is symbolism for nuclear weapons. Anyway, May 20th was known ahead of time, and again, that was another confirmation, the signs on May 20th, which is explained in other videos, for it being a step in the trail of signs that is leading to the date that Israel will nuke Damascus with a nuclear bomb. Okay, this will coincide with Israel's 900th month anniversary, and the date 5/4 hints at 9. Okay. The 75th anniversary was May 14th, and that is 900 months, and the number 9 is the number that symbolizes judgment. And furthermore, Hebrew gematria for Damascus, Syria is 999. Regarding August 24th, it will be exactly 23 weeks, which is 44% of a year. And again, God pairs numbers 23 and 44 together in his signs to confirm the signs and connections, because the 44th president was the basketball president that wore jersey number 23 and will become the president again in 2023. So this is a pairing of 23 and 44. And again, August 24th will be exactly 23 weeks after the explosion at the KGB building on the border with Ukraine on March 16th, 2023. And March 16th, 316 hints at 3 times 16 equals 48, which hints at the 48th president, the Antichrist. This sign that was predicted in advance, a sign that was predicted in advance, and the signs have indicated that the material from the dirty bomb will come from Ukraine. Okay, so before March 16th, it was known ahead of time that this would be the date of a prophetic explosion. Initially, it was thought that it would be the date of the predicted dirty bomb, but shortly after discovering March 16th, it was realized that it would be only a step, but that there would be a prophetic explosion on that date, and that is exactly what happened. There was the prophetic explosion in the KGB building on the border with Ukraine. And again, this is part of the signs that God is using to communicate that the material from the dirty bomb, or I should say plural, 2 dirty bombs that will explode in Manhattan as predicted on September 25th, will be from Ukraine, the dirty bomb material, the nuclear material. August 24th will be 191 days after February 14th, 2023. This was the day of the toxic spill and fire on the I-10 highway and evacuation in the 48th state. Okay, this is hinting at, this sign is explained in the other videos, okay? So I won't explain much more here, but it's hinting at the evacuation from the dirty bomb in Manhattan, okay? Now, this too is explained in other videos, but I'll just go briefly. August 24th will be exactly 6 + 6 + 6 weeks, the number of the Antichrist, which is 4 months and 4 days, which hints at the 44th president, Antichrist. After April 20th, 2023, this was the day of the Starship explosion, another dirty bomb explosion, prophetic sign, and the hybrid eclipse, which followed the lunar eclipse over Uranus, which was 84 years after another lunar eclipse that occulted Uranus. And Uranus's orbit is 84 years, and Uranus is named after uranium, and on and on. So April 20th, 2023 was exactly 84 years after Hitler's 50th, and I explain all of that in the other video. But that's very prophetic. The Cult of the Fuhrer birthday celebration, the 50th on 1939, Okay, so let's move on. I say part 2 coming here. That's just referring to the part 2 of this email. So let's move down and read what we get to part 2. All right, so why is May 4th, the date 5-4, so important? Why did God point to 5-4? The answer couldn't be more profound. Although it wasn't known until afterward, 5-4, May 4th, was the National Day of Prayer. And God's purpose with all of this was to point to Abraham's Proclamation 97. I recommend reading this. Okay, now you can't click this in the video. Type into a search Lincoln's Proclamation 97 and read it. It's huge. It's important. It is the biggest thing that God was pointing to with all of this. All of these signs that were pointing to May 4th. And by now you probably have recognized that there are a multitude of videos that I made regarding all of the information that God used. He went overboard, to use a expression, in order to point to May 4th. And that was in order to point to President Abraham Lincoln's Proclamation 97. So are you not going to read it after all that God has done? That's the question. Okay, so obviously you need to read it because God went through all this effort to point to it. So rather than read it into a video, I'll just let you read it. This is why the big sign on May 4th was the 4 horse deaths in 5 days. So in 5 days, 4 horses died at Churchill Downs Racetrack in Kentucky. That was news on this day. May 4th was the 5th day in which 4 horses had died. The Kentucky Derby is located 50 miles from where Abraham Lincoln was born. As I explained in an email prior to May 4th, God is using Kentucky in his signs as symbolism for the Civil War. Again, it was neutral during the Civil War. Abraham said himself that it would be nice if God were on their side, but he must have Kentucky. He said to lose Kentucky would be to lose the whole game, things like that. I'm paraphrasing, of course. But Kentucky symbolized the Civil War. It was in between the North and the South, for one thing as well. Abraham Lincoln and the leader for the South, Jefferson, were born in Kentucky. Okay. And the 54th Massachusetts Regiment is Civil War symbolism. And God lined it up that the National Day of Prayer, which I don't think is the same date every year, it's a particular day of the week every year, but it lined up with May 4th this year. And it was Lincoln that instituted the National Day of Prayer with his Proclamation 97. And God pointed to Lincoln on the date 5-4 with 5 days and 4 horse deaths at Churchill Downs. That was the news story at the Kentucky Derby, which is located right near where he was born. It's amazing. And again, May 4th was known ahead of time, a long time, since April 13th, when we had the 21 days count known, with the signs in Massachusetts pointing to the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. Okay, this is why the signs that connected to May 4th, 5-4, were communicating symbolism regarding the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment, the first black regiment in the Civil War. And all of this was pointing to Lincoln's Proclamation 97, which is what it is all about. The judgment destruction of the nation that will now begin is because of America's departure from God, as stated in the Proclamation 97. This is the message of Proclamation 97. Lincoln essentially said similar things to Washington when he consecrated the nation to God in Trinity Chapel, the miracle chapel, the only building to have survived at ground zero, to have survived the falling debris on 9/11, because God was pointing to Washington's consecration of the nation to God. But this Proclamation 97 comes in the midst of the tragedy of the Civil War and the ordeal that the nation went through. And this battle that was clear to many, including Lincoln, was a battle between good and evil. And so that's why it's important to read Proclamation 97, because it talks about how the nation has been blessed because it has been in alignment with God. And the destiny of America was destined by God. For 47 years prior to Lincoln, there wasn't a national day of prayer. The 11 presidents that preceded Lincoln did not call for a national day of prayer. It was during the tragedy of the Civil War that Lincoln believed it was necessary for a national day of humiliation. The nation needs humiliation now as well. What I also believe is that the message in Isaiah chapter 5 aligns with Proclamation 97. And I believe this message from God in Isaiah chapter 5 begins in verse 4. The news story regarding the 4 horse deaths in 5 days at the Kentucky Derby mentioned that it was a reminder of the 42 horses that died at the Santa Anita racetrack in 2019, which was another major prophetic sign that included the 23rd horse death on March 31st, 2019, after the racetrack reopened after a period of investigation into the horse deaths, which was 23 days after President Trump visited God's trumpet, visited the 23 crosses in Beauregard, Alabama, in Lee County. General Beauregard was the general that began the Civil War when he shot at Fort Sumter, and General Lee was the famous Confederate general. These deaths, the 4 horse deaths, were a result of the Deep South, the 23 deaths were a result, which was 23 days before the 23rd horse died. These 23 horse deaths were a result of these 23 deaths in the tornado were a result of the Deep South tornado outbreak that was a Civil War prophetic sign. For example, General Beauregard was involved in the first battle of the Civil War at Fort Sumter, which is right next to Fort Wagner, the location of the famous battle of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. Full circle here. Interestingly, the sign on April 20th, 2023 pointed to the last battle of the Civil War, and which was right near where the SpaceX compound is, on that strip of land there. That was the last battle. So that would, and of course the explosion right there pointed to that. And as explained in the Starship rocket explosion video, this sign pointed to May 4th. Okay. These horse deaths, these horse signs. Oh, by the way, there was 42 horses, and I failed to mention, in the Bible, the number 42 is symbolic of slaughter. The number 42 is used in context of slaughter. And we're talking about 42 horses that died at that racetrack, which is just astounding. They had to close the racetrack after 22 horses, and then the 23rd horse died. But the number 22, as explained in other videos, is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, which is the thing that is causing a mass slaughter. Okay? The thing that you can't talk about. Furthermore, SpaceX is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. But anyway, let's move on here. These signs, these horse signs, are also part of the theme of signs that reveal Barack Obama as the American Pharaoh, which was the prophetic significance of the Triple Crown winner American Pharaoh, who was the first Triple Crown winner in 444 months, 37 years, since the horse named Affirmed, which is an affirmation that the American Pharaoh is the Antichrist, the 44th president. The Kentucky Derby is located in Kentucky, the state over which the Great American Eclipse peaked over. The reason the Great American Eclipse peaked over Kentucky is that this pointed to the area of the country nicknamed Little Egypt, as well as the Land of Lincoln. The eclipse was exactly 3,000 days after Barack Obama went down to Cairo, Egypt to deliver his famous Cairo, Egypt speech in order to tell the Muslim world that America is no longer a Christian nation. 3,000 hints at the exodus from Egypt. There were 3,000 that were perished after their rebellion at Mount Sinai, after their exodus from Egypt. That's why it is 3,000 days between when Barack Obama went down to Egypt, Cairo, Egypt, and the day of the eclipse over Little Egypt. Isaiah chapter 31 describes the Antichrist and begins with, "Woe to those who go down to Egypt and rely on horses." This is why this 4 horses in 5 days sign in Kentucky occurred on the date 5/4 in 2023, as this date hints at Obama, because 5/4 hints at 9. 5 plus 4 equals 9, and also 54 is a multiple of 9. And 23 hints at 23, which makes it a pairing of 9 and 23 that reveals Obama. 9 and 23 also reveal what the mark of the Antichrist is. And this is also the symbolism in the paths of the eclipses over America that will cross over each other over the area of Little Egypt that includes Kentucky. Okay, so the 2 eclipses will cross over each other and engender an X over the middle of the country. There was the path of totality of the Great American Eclipse in 2017 that peaked over the Land of Lincoln and Little Egypt. And the upcoming one in 2024 will cross over it perpendicular to it and engender an X. And it will cross over the first eclipse's path exactly where it peaked, coincidentally, which is also coincidentally where Little Egypt is, including, for example, Cairo, Illinois, which is a city that Obama delivered a speech in as a U.S. senator. Okay, so we have, and the X will be symbolism for the mark of the Antichrist, because the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist, described in Ezekiel chapter 9, would have been a Tav mark, which in ancient Hebrew was an X. And so, what was I saying here? Okay, so this is more reason why these Kentucky horse signs here, because it's pointing ultimately to the Antichrist and the mark of the Antichrist. Yes, what I was getting at is the numbers 9 and 23 are paired together because 23 chromosomes. The thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist, changes one's chromosomes, and that is symbolized by the X. That's why the mark of the Antichrist is symbolized by an X, is because it is symbolism for chromosomes that are changed with the mark of the Antichrist, which the inverse of which is described in Ezekiel chapter 9. Furthermore, the number 9 is the number that symbolizes judgment, and the mark of the Antichrist is judgment, and also the thing about the X is where they cross. That's what an X is. It's two equal lines that cross in the middle of each other. That's what will be engendered with the two eclipses. And the mid date, because an X is all about the midpoint. Same with pairs of chromosomes. They are joined together in the centromere when the two chromosomes are paired together to produce or make an X. So X's are all about the midpoint and the middle date between the two eclipses, August 21st, 2017 and April 8th, 2024. The mid date was December 14th, 2020. And that was the date of the symbolic first administered thing. The first administered thing to the general population, not in a so-called phony trial, was administered on December 14th, 2020, the exact mid date between the two eclipses, which is confirmation that it is the mark of the Antichrist, the thing. Okay? And so let's move on. There were a number of connections to 5-4, including a symbolic 3 sets of 7 and Kentucky. This 4 horses in 5 days sign at the Kentucky Derby on 5-4 was 37, which hints at 3 sets of 7, days after the signs involving Kentucky in the 15th state on March 28th, 2023, including the barge at the dam in Louisville, Bill 153, and the Kentucky senator's assistant that was stabbed, as well as the representative of the 15th District of Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay, so I'm getting at some things that we're talking about in previous emails, and I don't think I should go into explaining them. But what I'm saying is that the date 5-4 that was all about Kentucky connected with a prophetic 3 sets of 7 days. One of the reasons why the date 5-4 was known in advance, it was 3 sets of 7 days from these Kentucky signs that occurred on March 28th, 2023. Okay. That included the barge with the toxic liquid in it that got stuck at the dam, and the senator from Kentucky, his assistant, was stabbed, and it was Bill 153, which is a prophetic number from the Bible, and that was the bill that made Kentucky a gun sanctuary state, which is very important. But that's explained in the 3 Mile Island video. This date here was known in advance, and the reason it was first discovered was that it is exactly 44 years after the 3 Mile Island accident, nuclear power plant accident, which hints at the evacuation from Manhattan Island due to the nuclear material dirty bomb, toxic bomb. Okay. Anyway, the 3 Mile Island video is an amazing video, and it's one of the essential videos, so make sure you watch it. Okay, so let me see. I'll probably go on to more. So on this date, March 28th, was also the sign involving the 70-year-old chocolate factory at 77 2nd Street, 3 sets of 7. That was a 3 sets of 7 sign. Okay, so it's explained in the other videos, but the point is that it was a 3 sets of 7 sign, which confirms this 37 days, 3 sets of 7 days, 3 sets of 7 symbolism between that date and May 4th. Okay. The sign that was the body cam footage of the 2 police officers in Louisville bank shooting was released on the same day that 2,000 residents were evacuated in a prophetic fire, and the day that Jordan's pair of shoes sold for $2.2. million. This was 2 days before the signs on April 13th that revealed adding 21 days to get to May 4th. Okay, so that's just another connection from Kentucky. In other words, the shooting at the Louisville bank, that shooting where the police officer was shot in the head, you may recall, that was a big deal at the time. And that date is also connecting to May 4th, which is the Kentucky signs. So just more confirmation there. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so all I'm saying is that there's walls of security collapsing and symbolism here. That's what's, and that's pointing to the Proclamation 97, which is talking about how when the nation departs from God, the blessings will be removed and curses and judgment will come. So, and again, May 4th was about the Proclamation 97 from the president from Kentucky, who said that Kentucky was the key to winning the war. Also, on this day of the 4 horse deaths was the news of the 4 Proud Boys' conviction for their activities on January 6th. January 6th is also symbolic of Joshua. The Hebrews blew trumpets before the walls of security collapsed. The focus of the left in their persecution of patriots and Christians is trumpets' call to march, as in the Hebrews that marched around the walls of security of Jericho. His call to march at 1:10 p.m., which hinted at Joshua, who is symbolized by 110 because he died at 110, to the Capitol building. So the call to march was at 1:10 p.m., where the security perimeter was breached, as in the walls of security that were breached. Also, the conviction of the 4 Proud Boys is part of the current Civil War. And this was on the day of the 4 horse deaths in 5 days, Civil War sign, which is a sign with 54th Massachusetts and Civil War symbolism. Okay, that's really profound there. That's why God tied in the 4 Proud Boys there. This is political persecution. They are casualties of the Civil War, these guys here. As well, on the day of the 4 horse deaths and 4 Proud Boys sign was another sign that contained slavery and freedom symbolism. The 4th of 4 prisoners that had escaped from a prison in Mississippi was captured. He was captured in Crystal Springs, Mississippi, which is right on the I-55 highway. The I-55 is prophetic because it connects Chicago and St. Louis to the area of the country nicknamed Little Egypt. From the Bible, Egypt is slavery and freedom symbolism. The inmate's surname is Harrison. This is 1 month and 26 days, which hints at 126 and 260 days, a number of days mentioned seven times in Bible prophecy regarding the period of the Antichrist. Okay, so this 5-4 date is 1 month and 26 days before it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis. Okay, so this is talking about June 30th. Okay, so June 30th was another step on the trail of signs. It was then August 24th, which I explained earlier. But June 30th was known ahead of time, and that was the day of the release of the new Harrison Ford movie. And I think there's another sign as well, I forget. And Harrison Ford, God is using because of his aviation mishaps, among other things, which is explained countless times in other videos. So I don't think I want to get into it again. Okay, but it's hinting at the aviation mishap of Kamala Harris. All right. Lincoln was the 16th president. Proclamation 97 hints at hints at 9 plus 7 equals 16. 16 hints at 4 times 4. The judgment destruction of America will involve the 44th president and Antichrist. This is the reason for the 3 signs involving the number 4 on the date 5/4, the National Day of Prayer that Lincoln called for in his Proclamation 97. Additionally, on 5/4, the 44-year-old leader of 44 million made a surprise visit to the International Criminal Court, which was 44 days after the prophetic nuclear weapons sign on March 21st, and 5/4 is 4 times 4 days before it is predicted that Israel will nuke Damascus, which, as I explained earlier, was May 20th, the Hiroshima Day sign. I explained that. And 5/4 is exactly 4 times 4 weeks before it is predicted that a dirty bomb will explode in Manhattan. Okay, so this 4 times 4 weeks actually gets us to August 24th. And again, it was realized soon after this that the reason why God was pointing to, and in fact, I think it was maybe even later in the same day, it was very soon after this, that it was realized that the dirty bomb trail didn't go to August 24th. It went to September 25th. And this 4 times 4 days gets us to August 24th, which, as I explained, was more 54th Massachusetts Regiment symbolism, right? Again, this is 5/4, which hints at the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. And again, August 24th is 54 days before the predicted date of Kamala Harris's plane crash. And on the date August 24th, Wagner died in a plane crash. And the 54th Massachusetts Regiment is known for its battle at Fort Wagner. Okay. On the same day that the 44-year-old of 44 million made a surprise visit to the ICC, and the day of 4 horses in 5 days, the news reported how the Minister of Defense of Israel said Iran had enough enriched uranium to make 5 nuclear bombs. Okay, so we have these 4 signs on this day, and now we have this 5. Also on this day, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Iran could blackmail every city in America. 5 nuclear bombs, and the 44-year-old of 44 million pairs with 4 horses in 5 days on the date 5/4. Amazing. It's amazing confirmation for adding 4 times 4 weeks, 4 days to 5/4 to the predicted bombing of Damascus on 5/20. And I already explained that's the day of the Hiroshima sign. The world and the ICC will then condemn Israel for war crimes. Another reason for these signs involving the number 4 on the date 5/4 is that the 4 horses in 5 days in the 15th state on the date 5/4 were exactly 15 weeks after January 19th, which hints at 9/11, and the reach of the debt ceiling at 31.4 trillion. 31.4 trillion hints at the eclipse that peaked over the 15th state. Okay, and that's because eclipses are calculated with pi, and pi is 3.14. 15 weeks is also exactly 105 days, which also hints at 15. The debt ceiling crisis in Congress is led by the Speaker of the House, who was elected on the 15th vote on January 7th, which was 117 days before 5/4. The 4 horses in 5 days on 5/4 in turn hint at adding 4 days to 5/4 to get the predicted date. Okay, now, I won't get into that. But that there were signs. This was another step in another trail. This was the day of the news of the scientific study, or rather the scientific study published that Manhattan Island is sinking, and another prophetic sign. I won't get into it. Okay, likewise, 5/4 pointed to the 16th president, 4 times 4, and Proclamation 97. 9 plus 7 equals 16 equals 4 times 4. And it was exactly 4 times 4 days after the collapse of the 4 floors of the car park at 4 p.m. in the financial district near the New York Stock Exchange. 4 New York City sheriff's cars were in the car park, and 4 people were taken to the hospital, while a 5th person was injured but refused treatment. So that's amazing. So we have a 5 and 4 as well there. And it was 4 times 4 days before this 5-4 date with the 4 horse deaths in 5 days. We have the 5 injured and only 4 going to the hospital in the 4 floors of the car park at 4 p.m. and 4 of the cars were sheriff's cars. And these signs involving the number 4 at 4 p.m., the closing time of the stock market, that pointed to the collapse of the stock market, were 4 times 4 days to the signs involving the number 4 on 5-4, and the 4 horses in 5 days around the racetrack on 5-4 was symbolic of the collapse of America. These were for hinting at adding 4 days to 5-4 to reach the predicted collapse. Okay. So that's, I'm not going to go into that. But one thing too, I forgot to mention is that if you recall, I was talking about a symbolic 3 sets of 7 connection, the 37 days, and which was Joshua symbolism when Joshua and the Hebrews marched around the walls of security of Jericho, and then they collapsed. 3 sets of 7, right? They marched for 7 days, and on the 7th day, they marched 7 times and blew 7 trumpets. And that's symbolized with the circuit around a racetrack. So the 4 horses that died in 5 days was around the Churchill Downs racetrack. And that's a circuit, which is symbolic of the marching around the walls of security, which is amazing too, which is why the Proclamation 97, God's judgment on the nation after its departure from God. And God pointed to Proclamation 97, but it was also through a racetrack, which is a hint at Joshua and the walls of security collapsing in judgment, which is pointing to America's walls of security collapsing in judgment very soon. It's underway, I should say. It's underway. It's happening right now. So that's amazing too. Okay. Okay, now here also on 5-4, the state legislature of the 12th state voted to ban abortions for over 12 weeks. This was 12 days after the Disney dragon fire and evacuation sign, which was a Revelation chapter 12 sign, as I explained in the Revelation chapter 12 sign video. That's the video that's predicting the dirty bomb. And in Revelation chapter 12, the dragon, which is why the Disney dragon, is waiting for the woman to give birth. The Revelation chapter 12 sign is about the rapture of the symbolic 144,000, and 12 times 12 equals 144, which is what the 12th state and 12 weeks abortion law hints at. The 4 horses in 5 days on 5-4 were in Kentucky, in the land of Lincoln and Little Egypt. These horse deaths were on the same day as the 12 weeks abortion law in the 12th state, 12 days after the evacuation of Tom Sawyer Island in the Magic Kingdom, and that was the day of the official statement from Biden regarding the evacuation from Khartoum on the Nile River, which is Egypt symbolism. At the time, 400 people had died in the fighting around Khartoum, and 400 is Egypt slavery and freedom symbolism, because the Hebrews in the Exodus had been afflicted for 400 years in Egypt. This is why exactly 400 days after the dragon fire and evacuation signs which were Revelation chapter 12 rapture signs, will be the day of the rapture on May 26th, 2024, Pentecost, in the calendar that watches for new moons. So that's an evacuation, the evacuation of God's faithful. But what I didn't recognize at the time that I wrote this paragraph is that this is for pointing to the date of the evacuation from Manhattan Island, the evacuation in Disneyland, the Magic Kingdom, from Tom Sawyer Island, where the Disney Dragon caught fire, was 12 days before the signs on May 4th, which was a 12 times 12 day sign, the 12th state, 12 weeks for abortions, which hints at 12 times 12 weeks later to the evacuation from an island, Manhattan Island, with the dirty bomb on September 25th. So this is how May 4th is a step in the trail of signs. It's because of this particular sign, because it's a date of overlapping trails, as you can tell by now. But this particular trail that we are watching regarding the predicted dirty bomb is revealed with the 12 times 12 sign here. And that is confirmed because it is also 12 days after the Revelation 12 sign. It's amazing, which was an evacuation sign, which is what the dirty bomb event will be, an evacuation from the island, just like the evacuation from Tom Sawyer Island. So this is amazing, but it is also a sign, speaking of overlapping, it is also a sign that reveals and confirms the date of the rapture, which was known before this sign, but this is a confirmation of it. May 26th, 2024. Also, it is now more clear what the reason for the arrest of the fourth prisoner in Mississippi on 5/4 in the town on the I-55. This points to Elvis, who was born in Mississippi and whose Graceland estate is in Memphis, which is connected to by the I-55. Gold is God's currency for man. It cannot be manipulated or programmed. King Elvis was known for being fond of gold. He famously wore a gold suit. He had many gold records that were on display in the Hall of Gold in Graceland, and he famously installed 24-karat gold fixtures in the bathrooms of his famous Lisa Marie airplane. So Elvis is synonymous with gold. Okay, so this is how God is working this sign here. 5/4 was about the 54th Massachusetts, which is about the $13 pay, which is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist and digital currency. Okay, so I've explained it in the other parts 1 and 2, I'm sure, but I'll explain it again. The 54th Massachusetts Regiment, the reason why God has pointed to it, one big reason, is that they were treated unequally. They were not paid the $13 that the other white northern soldiers were paid. And this was official policy from Washington. Okay? And so, again, from the Bible, the number 13 symbolizes the Antichrist. Nimrod, a type for the Antichrist, was the 13th generation from Ham. Haman, another type for the Antichrist, persecuted the Jews on the 2 13th days of the month, and the two Antichrists are described in the book of Revelation in chapter 13. But the mark of the Antichrist will be enforced through programmable digital currency, because the financial system will collapse and the Federal Reserve will implement its digital currency, which can be programmed, and therefore it can be restricted and purposed for certain purchases. And what will happen is those that do not take the mark of the Antichrist will not be permitted to buy or sell food, because food will be rationed in the crisis, and it'll be a test of faith. You'll have to be willing to starve you will not be able to use the digital currency. But God's currency is gold, which can't collapse. That's why it's God's currency for man. It cannot be manipulated or programmed. Okay? The man-made currency is the problem. Okay? So, all right. So you see what I'm getting at here. Now, Elvis moved from Mississippi to Memphis at the age of 13. So this is a confirmation of a connection between Elvis and gold and the $13 of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. Okay, because he moved at the age of 13. Memphis equals Egypt, because Memphis is named after Memphis, Egypt. Egypt equals Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, which equals in the Bible Antichrist symbolism. Graceland equals Egypt, the king of Egypt's palace. In this context, the Graceland estate is symbolic of the king's palace. King Elvis died at the age of 42. I think I mentioned already the number 42 is symbolic in Bible prophecy of the Antichrist. Elvis died 6 years, 6 months, and 6 days before the Lisa Marie plane was brought to Graceland Estate from where it was in Florida. The plane has Elvis's logo on its tail, which is a lightning bolt, which is Antichrist symbolism in the Bible. Elvis publicly took the polio thing on the Ed Sullivan Show, which radically changed thing rates, the rates in which things were taken by the baby boomer generation, and therefore changed history in regards to things. In other words, Elvis is a major historic moment in the history of things. And you know what I'm talking about, the thing that you can't talk about. But in the history of things, things wouldn't be the things they are today were it not for Elvis. Because he was idolized, which is more Antichrist symbolism, in fact. He was an idol. And the Bible, that's the first commandment, to not have false idols before God. So he took the thing publicly on the Ed Sullivan Show, which radically changed thing rates for the baby boomer generation. And that date was October 28th, 1956, which was 66 years, 6 months, and 6 days before May 4th, 5/4 in 2023, which hinted at the 54th Massachusetts that weren't paid the $13, which is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. Wow. The arrest of the 4th prisoner in Mississippi, next to the I-55, on the day of other signs involving the number 4, was exactly 4 times 4 weeks after Lisa Marie died at the age of 54. Wow. Elvis's career began in Memphis in 1954. Wow. Again, he moved to Memphis, which is Antichrist king symbolism because of Egypt, at the age of 13, which is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, and furthermore the Antichrist, because of the $13. King Elvis was fond of gold, including the fixtures in his Lisa Marie plane. On the day that Lisa Marie died, gold gained exactly $1.30, which hints at 13, and closed at 1,923.00. This is 4 times 4 weeks after gold closed 4 times 4 weeks after gold closed at 1,923.00 were the signs involving the number 4 on 5/4 in 2023. And the date is a pairing of 9 and 23. Because as I explained, 5/4 hints at 9 and then 23. And then the date, 5/4, is about the $13 of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. Okay, so 1,923 that gold closed at, 4 times 4 weeks before the date 5/4 and the signs involving the number 4, but the date 5/4 hits at 9 and 23, which is the 9 to 23 in the gold close. Furthermore, as I explained, God pairs 9 and 23 together to confirm the signs and connections. And many people know that the Revelation chapter 12 sign was on the date 9/23 in 2017. But okay. And if we're going down that path, then the rapture will be the purpose of it is to avoid the extreme persecution from the mark of the Antichrist, which is symbolized by the gold here. It's pointing to the programmable digital currency, the antitype to gold, God's currency. This paragraph here is amazing. This paragraph deserves its own video, actually. Because this explains the prophetic purpose, for example, of the death of Lisa Marie. And Elvis, Elvis. Yeah. Also, I forgot to add that Lisa Marie died on the day that gold gained $1.30, 13 days after 13 bison were killed at Yellowstone, on the same day that the queen of celebrity interviews, Barbara Walters, died at 93. This is because of sun records, because the sun is 93 million miles away from Earth. Elvis died 6 years, 6 months, and 6 days before the Lisa Marie plane arrived at Graceland on February 22nd, 1984, which is exactly 40 years before February 22nd, 2024. The date it is predicted the sun will erupt, and then Yellowstone will erupt 2 days after that. 40 years because the Hebrews spent 40 years getting from Egypt, Memphis, in other words, to the Promised Land, Graceland. Graceland in this context is symbolism for the Promised Land after 40 years out of Egypt. And that's why the 40 years in between when Elvis's plane arrived at Graceland to 222, which is also symbolic of the second coming and the rapture, into the Promised Land. And 13 weeks after February 22nd will be the Jupiter-Venus conjunction next to the sun, so it won't be visible. In other words, hidden, just like the rapture will be. And this conjunction, which will be on May 23rd, will be followed by the rapture on May 26th. Yes, so, and this 13 weeks is hinted at with these connections involving 13 and gold and currency and mark of the Antichrist symbolism. And furthermore, the eruption of Yellowstone and the power grid that will be knocked out by the solar storm will be what causes the food shortage and the food rationing, which will then be restricted to only those who take the mark of the Antichrist through the digital currency, which is what the number 13 hints at. Oh, it just occurred to me that 222 hints at 2 times 22 equals 44. Yellowstone is in the is on the 44th latitudinal line and in the 44th state. On 5-4, the horse favored to win the Kentucky Derby was spotted tripping a bit while running around at the track. This led to him being the 5th horse to be scratched from the Kentucky Derby. The significance of this 5th horse to be scratched from the Kentucky Derby is further highlighted by the fact that there hadn't been 5 scratched horses from the Kentucky Derby since 1936. This 5th scratched horse was injured on the date 5-4, the day of 4 horse deaths in 5 days. This 5th scratched horse paired with 4 horse deaths, and it provided a second witness to 4 horse deaths in 5 days. So there was 2 ways in which the 4 horse deaths gave us 5 and 4. Because it wasn't only 4 horses in 5 days, but it was also the same day as the 5th scratched horse. In fact, the news story regarding the 5th scratched horse focuses on the 4 horse deaths, as it is widely speculated that the reason for the scratch is due to the 4 horse deaths, or related, and the organizers acting out of an abundance of caution. It is said that they were probably being overly cautious because of the 4 horse deaths. So in other words, this 5th scratched horse was scratched due to overcaution. Besides providing a second witness, and that was because of the 4 horse deaths. So another way in which it's clear that the 4 horse deaths are related to the 5 scratched horses. Besides providing a second witness for the 4 horses in 5 days sign on 5-4, the big reason for the 5th scratched horse is that there hadn't been 5 scratched horses since 1936. This was 97 years ago! 97 exclamation marks. This is stunning confirmation that these Kentucky Derby signs on the National Day of Prayer point to Abraham Lincoln's Proclamation 97. This Kentucky Derby also ran the fewest horses since 2015. What happened in 2015? That was the year that American Pharoah won the Kentucky Derby, the big prophetic sign, which is the root for all of these horse race signs. Now, I have decided to read Proclamation 97. I was thinking earlier that I would let you read it, but I'm just going to read it into the video. Proclamation 97, appointing a day of national humiliation, fasting, and prayer. By the President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, March 30th, 1863. Whereas the Senate of the United States, devoutly recognizing the supreme authority and judgment government of Almighty God in all the affairs of men and of nations, has by a resolution requested the President to designate and set apart a day for national prayer and humiliation. Whereas it is the duty of nations as well as of men to own their dependence upon the overruling power of God, to confess their sins and transgressions in humble sorrow, yet with assured hope that genuine repentance will lead to mercy and pardon, and to recognize the sublime truth announced in the Holy Scriptures and proven by all history, that those nations are only blessed whose God is the Lord. And insomuch as we know that by his divine law nations, like individuals, are subjected to punishments and chastisements in this world, may we now justly fear that the awful calamity of civil war, which now desolates the land, may be but a punishment inflicted upon us for our presumptuous sins, to the needful end of our national reformation as a whole people, we have been the recipients of the choicest bounties of heaven. We have been preserved these many years in peace and prosperity. We have grown in numbers, wealth, and power, as no other nation has ever grown. But we have forgotten God. We have forgotten the gracious hand which preserved us in peace and multiplied and enriched and strengthened us. And we have vainly imagined, in deceitfulness of our hearts, that all these blessings were produced by some superior wisdom and virtue of our own. Intoxicated with unbroken success, we have become too self-sufficient to feel the necessity of redeeming and preserving grace, too proud to pray to God that made us, to the God that made us. It behooves us, then, to humble ourselves before the offended power, to confess our national sins, and to pray for clemency and forgiveness. Now, therefore, in compliance with this request, and fully concurring in the views of the Senate, I do by this my proclamation designate and set apart Thursday, the 30th day of April, 1863, as a national day, as a day of national humiliation, fasting, and prayer. And I do hereby request all the people to abstain on that day from their ordinary secular pursuits, and to unite at their several places of public worship and their respective homes, in keeping the day holy to the Lord and devoted to the humble discharge of the religious duties proper to that solemn occasion. All this being done in sincerity and truth, let us then rest humbly in the hope authorized by the divine teachings that the united cry of the nation will be heard on high and answered with blessings no less than the pardon of our national sins and the restoration of our now divided and suffering country to its former happy condition of unity and peace. In witness thereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the United States to be affixed. Done at the city of Washington this 30th day of March, A.D. 1863, and of the independence of the United States, the 87th. Abraham Lincoln. What is also very important is that Abraham Lincoln was the man behind the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery. And this theme of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment in God's prophetic signs here is a theme of slavery and freedom, which is pointing to the current Civil War and the issue of slavery and freedom, which is the theme of life and the theme of the Bible. And again, the 54th Massachusetts Regiment is about the unequal pay of $13 that the white Northern soldiers were paid. And that is a hint at the 13th Amendment, which is about slavery and freedom, which is pointing to the programmable digital currency that will be used, oppressive minority laws, to enforce the mark of the Antichrist through the rationing of food that will only be permitted through the use of the digital currency to those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist. And so what I am saying is that the connection with the $13 is also to point to the 13th Amendment. It was 18, 6 plus 6 plus 6, horses that ran in the 2023 Kentucky Derby. It was 18, 6 plus 6 plus 6, horses that ran in the 2015 Kentucky Derby when American Pharoah ran. American Pharoah was horse 18, 6 plus 6 plus 6. This is 3 sets of 7. Sorry, this is 3 sets of 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6. So again, these two races, so this Kentucky Derby ran the fewest horses since 2015. In both of those races, they ran 18 horses, and the winner of the 2015 race was horse number 18. That's 3 instances of the number 18, which God does repeat a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. And the meaning of 18 is that it hints at 6 plus 6, the number of the Antichrist, which identifies, therefore, the Antichrist as an American, the American Pharaoh, Barack Obama. Because again, one reason, of course, among hundreds and hundreds, or maybe thousands, is that American Pharaoh won the Triple Crown for the first time in 444 months. There was a sign symbolic of Exodus and Egypt in the final result of the race. The horse Angel of Empire finished 3rd and was horse 14. The Angel of God appeared in the burning bush. God revealed his plan for Moses to deliver his people from Pharaoh and the Egyptian Empire. In Exodus 3:14, God revealed his name, I am. The Hebrew symbol for this is the exact same symbol as the symbol for pi, the shorthand of which is 3.14, which is why I am is in Exodus 3:14. This is why the Angel of Empire horse finished 3rd and was horse 14. Pi and 314 also hints at the eclipse, which peaked over Kentucky and Little Egypt, the location of the race. Yeah, so American Pharaoh won the Kentucky Derby in Little Egypt. That's amazing as well. The 2023 Kentucky Derby was the first time that 2 horses from Japan, in Japan God uses as nuclear weapons symbolism, nuclear bomb symbolism, ran in the race. God uses firsts as signs, instances of firsts, or first instances of things. These 2 horses placed 6th and 12th, which hints at 6 and also 6 plus 6, which gives us another 666. The race is 110 days to the predicted dirty bomb in Manhattan. All right, so this was prior to the more recent knowledge, and again, the knowledge was learned soon after this email was composed. So, and I explained that earlier. So the location where 110 stories collapsed. So that's another connection anyway. The race around the racetrack circuit is symbolic of the march around the walls of security of Jericho led by Joshua, who died at the age of 110. The race is also 11, which is a number that in context in the Bible is used in context of execution of judgment. Days before it is predicted Israel will bomb Iran's nuclear facilities. Okay, so that was another step on the trail as well. Okay, so that's explained in the other videos. May 17th, the May 17th date, which is, okay, so the May 16th and May 17th date ran into each other because it was the same Hebrew calendar date, because Hebrew calendar days begin at sunset and go to the following sunset. Anyway, that was the day that the tomb was visited. Joseph's tomb was visited for the first time. And anyway, it's extremely profound. I'm not going to go into it here, though. But it was another step in the trail of signs. All right, so we received another sign on 5/4, May 4th. The previous night was a prophetic sign involving the Angels, the Los Angeles Angels baseball team, which is a second witness to this game on the following day on 5/4. The game was in St. Louis next to the Gateway Arch. In the Bible, judgment on a people or nation symbolically begins at the gates. It figures there would be significance to the location of the game the night before, but it shows up here in this game on 5-4. The final score in this sign, the final score is the sign. It was 11-7, which hints at 117, which has become clear that 117 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. And I explained this in the absolute must-watch, foundational, essential, must-watch video titled Harris's Prediction, Harris's Plane Will Crash on the date 10/17 equals eclipse peak at 1:17 p.m. Okay? So the title again is Harris's Plane Will Crash on the date 10/17 equals eclipse peak at 1:17 p.m. Make sure you watch that video. It's very well done. It's not just reading. It's thought out. It's planned. It's full of images and things. Because of Hank Aaron taking the mark on the first day of the 117th Congress, 117 days after the Braves-Brewers major sign on 9/9/2020, and on and on. So I explain all that. So let me see. The date 5 in the other video, which I'm telling you, you should stop this video here and go watch the other video and come back, actually, is what you should do. The date 5-4 is our 9. Again, 5-4 equals 5 plus 4 equals 9, and it is a multiple of 9. And 5-4 was about the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, which is about the number 13. And 9 times 13 equals 117. Okay, so there's the connection. The score in this Angels game was 11-7. That's extremely prophetic, okay, because there's many reasons. One of the reasons why 117 is very profound and prophetic and why God uses it is that it hints at an 11 and 7. It hints at, for example, Genesis 7:11, which is the verse in the account of the flood that the flood began, the judgment began. So God is using 117 and other instances of combinations of 11 and 7 to hint at the coming beginning of the judgment destruction. Okay, so on this day that the angels, which I'll explain, I'm assuming later in this paragraph, is symbolic, prophetic. This score 11-7 was on the day of 5-4, which gives us a 9, and the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, which is about the number 13, and 9 times 13 equals 117. Okay. This is why the 11-7 score in St. Louis on 5-4 is amazing. Also, angels hint at fallen angels and the Antichrist. This game, and furthermore, they play in Los Angeles, which is also Spanish for the angels. This game on 5-4 is 1 month and 26 days, which hints at 1,260 days, which is a number of days mentioned 7 times in Bible prophecy regarding the period of the end times and the Antichrist. Okay, so God uses 1 month and 26 days in his signs. This isn't the only instance for this symbolism. And so again, 5-4 is 1 month and 26 days before it is predicted that Harris will die in a plane crash. Okay, so what day is that? So that's the June 30th date, which I mentioned earlier was a step in the trail, and it was learned not long after this email was composed that it would be a step in the trail. It was the day, for example, that the new Harrison Ford movie was released. Okay, and Harrison Ford, again, is being used for, among other things, his aviation mishaps, which hints at the aviation mishap of Kamala Harris. Okay. In other words, this sign is amazing confirmation of the connection to Harris's crash, which it is, because June 30th connects to the day she crashes. Let's just put it that way. It's a step in the trail, which is something to be expected on 5-4. 1 month and 26 days before the crash in St. Louis, because the number 117 hints at St. Louis. The eclipse peaked in St. Louis at 1:17 p.m. Additionally, the 11-7 score which hints at 117, is mark of the Antichrist symbolism, as is 1 month and 26 days, as it hints at 1,260 days. Also, fallen angels in Revelation chapter 12 are in context of the 1,260 days, period. So there you have more confirmation of the relevance of 1 month and 26 days because this is an angel's sign. And in Revelation chapter 12, we have the mention of the 1,260 days and the angels that are thrown down from heaven to earth at the beginning of the 1,260 days, a symbolic beginning of the end times period and the Antichrist. Furthermore, Harris's crash will lead to the rise of the Antichrist. She will be replaced by Michelle Obama, and then Michelle Obama will be replaced by Barack Obama, the Antichrist. Her fall from the sky will symbolize the dragon and his angels being thrown down from heaven to earth, which makes it perfect that the angels are involved in this sign. Last but not least, the name cardinals hints at the bird strike that Harris's plane will suffer 1 month and 26 days later, which again is a step in the trail to the date that she will crash in her plane in St. Louis due to a bird strike. And it's the St. Louis Cardinals that play in St. Louis. In other words, the angels were playing the St. Louis Cardinals in St. Louis, and her plane will crash in St. Louis due to a bird strike, and cardinals are birds. There was another development on 5/4, May 4th. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said, quote, "We have made clear to Iran that it can never be permitted to obtain a nuclear weapon," unquote, Sullivan said in an address to the Washington Institute think tank on Thursday, which was the May 4th date. Quote, "As President Joe Biden has repeatedly affirmed, he will take the actions necessary to stand by this statement, including by recognizing Israel's freedom of action," unquote. That's fairly significant. And again, this was the day that is part of the trail of signs that is also leading to the date that Israel will bomb Iran. And furthermore, this was the day that the first Jewish leader of Ukraine, the 44-year-old of 44 million, made his surprise visit to the International Criminal Court, which will condemn Israel after it will bomb Iran. The date 5/4 hinted at the number 9, a multiple of 9, 5 plus 4 equals 9. 5/4/2023, again, was a pairing of 9 and 23. 90 days hints at 9, and also 9 times 10, which hints at Isaiah 9:10 through 11, and 9:11. The date 2/3 hints at 23. Exactly 90 days prior to 5/4 was 2/3, the day of the bomb train in East Palestine. Okay, now, there you have it. Okay, so I made a video about, a long video, a must-watch, extremely profound, essential video, the essential of the essentials, the East Palestine video, but I probably didn't mention how it is 90 days from that day to the May 4th date, which is another step on the trail that's leading to the dirty bomb. And that's what the bomb train hints at. The chemicals, the dirty, toxic chemicals from the bomb train explosion hints at the dirty bomb, and the evacuation of East Palestine is hinting at the evacuation from Manhattan. All right. Now, again, May 4th connects with 12 times 12 days to September 25th, the date of the predicted dirty bomb. But 90 days exactly back is the date 2/3, which gives us a pairing of 23 and 9, which confirms the signs and connections. As has been explained, that's how God's big picture of signs works. That's what makes it not a product of one's imagination. And so we have this clear connection from the East Palestine train bomb through May 4th to the date it is predicted that the dirty bomb will explode. Okay, so this is another pairing of 9 and 23. And as I wrote, and 5/4 was predicted to be the date of a dirty bomb due to this event and others pointing to 5/4. Okay, it was a step in the trail. The train had 9 train cars that were unloaded, and the train cars that derailed that were unloaded. So I guess what I mean by that is they were empty. And on the train cars that derailed, 11 of them were... No. Probably I mean that after the wreck happened, 9 of the train cars were unloaded. And of the train cars that derailed, 11 of them were tank cars which dumped 100,000 gallons of hazardous material, including vinyl chloride, benzene residue, and butyl acrylate. Okay, this pairs 9 and 11 and further confirms the 90 days connection between the date 2-3 and 5-4. All right. On 2-3, the date of the East Palestine bomb train and evacuation, there was another previously unknown sign. The U.S. Department of Labor's Bureau of Labor Statistics released the monthly jobs report. Quote, President Biden's economic plan is working, unquote, said Commerce Secretary Raimondo. Quote, when President Biden took office, the unemployment rate was 6.3%. Today, it is just 3.4%. This is the lowest in 54 years, unquote. Regarding this report, the U.S. Department of Commerce website went on to say that, quote, in addition, there was near record low unemployment among the black population, which is 5.4%. That's in the quote. And Hispanic population, which is 4.5%, and that's also in the quote. 5.4% and 4.5% hint at 45 and 54, which are both multiples of 9, and 4 plus 5 equals 9, and 5 plus 4 equals 9. The lowest unemployment rate in 54 years also hints at 9. The lowest unemployment rate in 54 years was reported exactly 90 days before the date 5-4. And 5-4, as we know, pointed to the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment, the first black regiment. Hence the 5.4% unemployment rate for the quote-unquote black population. That's amazing. The monthly jobs report for April came out on 5-5, one day after 5-4. And this is close enough to make it a sign for the date 5-4. This is because the report once again touted the lowest unemployment rate in 54 years. And so I assume that reports come out on the Friday or something, and that's why it's close enough, because if they always come out on the Friday, then it can't be any closer to the date 5-4 than the day after. And this report again reported the lowest unemployment rate in 54 years, which of course hints at 5-4 in the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. Okay, this report tied the rate of the unemployment rate in the report on 2-3 at 3.4%, which was the lowest in 54 years. Okay, so they tied the two together is what I think I meant to say. 3.4% hints at 34, and 34 is the 9th Fibonacci number. God uses the 9th prime number, 9th triangular number, etc., because the number 9 is the most important number as it symbolizes God's judgment. Furthermore, this date 5-4 is also a hint at the number 9. And so we have in this report the 9th Fibonacci number. There's more prophetic reasons for the number 34, but I won't explain that here. This hints at 54, with the lowest rate in 54 years. That was in addition to the sign on 5-4. That was how within 5 days there were 4 horse deaths at the Kentucky Derby in Kentucky, the state that symbolizes the Civil War, in which the 54th Regiment fought. The Bureau of Labor, it didn't fight in Kentucky, it fought in the Civil War, is what I meant to say. The Bureau of Labor Statistics report said the average hourly earnings for all employees has increased by 0.5%, and that those same earnings are 4.4% higher than they were a year ago. This too paired 5 and 4 and hinted at 54. Of course, all of these positive statistics can't be relied upon and are the result of the many injured and dead people due to the thing that created the demand for employees. And it is the thing that is the mark of the Antichrist. That is what God is pointing to through the 54th Regiment, with its theme of slavery and freedom and oppressive minority laws in the form of their pay that was not equal with the white Union soldiers. Again, the pay is symbolic of the programmable digital currency that will be used to enforce the mark of the Antichrist, to restrict the purchase and selling of food to those who only have taken the thing, the mark of the Antichrist. And so this is the purpose of the unemployment rate on 5-4. This is a very important sign that God used to communicate the deaths from the thing. Okay. So this sign identifies the mark of the Antichrist. I can't emphasize enough how important this is. I was just about to do that without reading on. Exactly. I can't emphasize how important this is. Our knowledge of the signs that were expected to occur on 5-4 were not complete without this unemployment sign. For example, the sign of how within 5 days there were 4 horse deaths needs this unemployment sign that points to the deaths from the thing. Furthermore, it may be that the deaths of the horses were the result of things that are put inside the horses. You know, if you can read it, what I'm pointing to, from their trainers. So in other words, the horse deaths could very well be the result of things that are put inside horses. It could be all a result of corruption, in other words. Why are there so many horses dying recently? Is it the racetrack? Is it the breeding of horses? Probably there's a cover-up going on, and it's similar to the 1990s and the home run derby, and that was the result of steroids. And what are they? They are things that are used by things that they are applied with things that put the things inside the people. Same as the things that go inside horses, in other words. And that is an example also of corruption. The steroid use and the home run derby, the cheating. In other words, there could be cheating going on that we're unaware of in the horse race community industry. But anyway, okay, so let's go on. Let's read further. Which would further add to the symbolic connections. If anything, the deaths of the horses were highly controversial, as are the quote-unquote mysterious deaths following the thing that people get. In fact, this in itself is a solid, relevant connection. The horse deaths were said to be mysterious, and therefore this hints at the quote-unquote mysterious death rates, and injury rates following the thing. In closing, I'll repeat it again for emphasis. The lowest unemployment rate in 54 years sign was God communicating the deaths from the thing and identifying it as the mark through the 54th Regiment. This is huge. And again, the reason why this is because the reason why the unemployment rate is so low is because of the drastic drop in the workforce, which is of course related to the thing and people taking the thing. But the reason why the 54th and why it's the lowest unemployment rate in 54 years is that it ties into commerce. But it's symbolism for slavery and freedom, the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. But the 54th Massachusetts Regiment was not paid their equal fair pay, symbolic of oppressive minority laws, which is symbolic of oppression of those that refuse the thing, and will be restricted from buying and selling food as a result when the food becomes rationed next year. And so that's why, and so, but the employment rate report is about commerce as well. It's about money, you could say. It is about money. Of course, it's about money. And so is the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. That's why the lowest unemployment rate in 54 years. And then we have the 4 horse deaths in 5 days, which is the 5-4, but that's death's symbolism. That's also confirmation that what we are talking about is deaths from the thing. And therefore, it's quite obvious, if we put the pieces of the puzzle together, that the reason why the horses keep dying is because of corruption and things that are being put inside horses. I hope you got all that. This is profound, and I hope you made it to this far into the video, because this is what it's all about. The 4th of 4 inmates that were caught next to the I-55 in Mississippi on 5-4, the day of 4 Proud Boys and 4 horses at the Kentucky Derby, had escaped from a Mississippi prison. This is because James Earl Ray, which hints at James Earl Jones, who was also born in Mississippi, near Memphis, and the I-55. Okay, James Earl Ray had escaped from a Mississippi prison. Yes, the man that shot Martin Luther King had escaped from a Mississippi prison. And now this sign makes more sense. He shot Martin Luther King on the date 4-4 in 1968. And on April 20th, 1968, he was placed on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. And it was the second time in history that there were 11 people on the list. 4 days later, it went back down to 10. Okay? So he was caught 4 days later. 4 days and 11 people on the list hints at 4 times 11 equals 44, as does the day that he shot MLK, the date 4-4. April 20th, 1968, this day that he was put on the list, 4 days before he was caught, which made the list 11 people, was exactly 42 months, which in Bible prophecy is mentioned 7 times as being the period of the Antichrist, after Kamala Harris was born on October 20th, 1964. That's a profound connection, which is explained more in another video, but we're getting some of it here. The surname of the 4th inmate on 5-4 that was caught is Harrison. That's a confirmation of what I'm talking about here, okay? So we have these 4s, but there was the 4 days before he was caught, James Earl Ray, when there was 11 on the list, which also made it 44. 4 days and 11, 4 times 4. 4 times 11 equals 44. So we have all this hint at the 44th president, Antichrist, who will come to power again after Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. But this is why this Martin Luther King, Antichrist King symbolism sign was exactly 42 months. Okay? I don't know if I mentioned it later, but furthermore, the day that he shot Martin Luther King was 1,260 days. So this 42 months in Bible prophecy is also 1,260 days. And the day that he shot Martin Luther King was 1,260 days after Kamala Harris was born. Okay. The surname, okay, and the surname is of the 4th inmate that was caught in Mississippi right next to the I-55, which connects to Memphis. His name is Harrison. That's just astounding. 54 is exactly, or the date 5-4 is exactly 4 times 4 weeks to August 24th, which is 54 days to October 17th. I apologize, I have not yet had time to explain more about October 17th and how it was learned. The other night I woke up with 10:17 on my mind, half asleep. When I checked the following day, it was confirmed that this is the date and that August 24th is a major step. So earlier I explained how it wasn't long after these signs that it was realized that although they point to August 24th, August 24th would be a step, which would be 54 days. And I explained earlier that that was the day of the Wagner death, but also it was the day that President Trump was arrested for the 4th time in the fourth state. And it was exactly 4 times 4 weeks after these signs involving the number 4, including the 4th inmate. The 4th out of 4 inmates that was caught. So that's amazing. Oh, and he was caught next to the I-55, and that's a pairing of 5 and 4, which hints at 54. Didn't even realize that till now. The 4th inmate was caught next to the I-55, which is a pairing of, which hints at 5 and 4. And this was the date 5-4. And his name is Harrison. Okay. So, okay. The link to Ray, described as, quote, a habitual criminal and escapee from the Mississippi State Prison, unquote, was made after a comparison of fingerprints at the scene to records of more than 53,000 convicted criminals. Okay. So the reason why they so what I'm saying is how they linked Ray. This is a quote. How they linked Ray, I'm quoting from Wikipedia or something. They linked Ray to the shooting of Martin Luther King through fingerprints, which were in the database of 53,000 convicted criminals. Okay? So April 20th, 1968, that date I've been talking about, and 53,000 criminals is 53, which is the 16th prime number, which hints at 4 times 4 years, to Harris in High Point, North Carolina, on the day of the first Ingenuity flight, the Mars helicopter. And this was exactly 9 years. So High Point hints at the high place. Okay, and she was there to promote her and Biden's infrastructure package, and she was at an electric bus company. The name Barack Obama in Hebrew means lightning from heaven. Lightning, electricity, that's why she was at the electric bus company, and she was in High Point. So, again, the name Barack Obama means lightning from high place. If I didn't say that correctly the first time. Lightning from high place. But Jesus said in Luke 10:18 that he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. And in the Bible, high place is a metaphor for heaven. For example, it is said that in Isaiah chapter 14 that Lucifer fell from the high place, a metaphor for heaven. And so Barak in Hebrew means lightning, Bama means high place, and O in the language Jesus would have spoken, Aramaic, is from. So Barack Obama means lightning from heaven. Either Jesus didn't know what he was saying when he said that, or he knew that there would be a famous president named Barack Obama and said it anyway, knowing that it would confuse us, or he revealed the identity of the Antichrist. Obviously, the latter option is the only one that makes any sense. So, okay, back to the High Point here. So Kamala Harris was in High Point, North Carolina, and she will fall from a high place in a plane crash, which is what is being hinted at here. When she falls from the high place, she will be replaced by the Antichrist, which is what is hinted at when Jesus said he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. So that's why she was in the high place on this date, which was April 19th, 2021. Okay? And so this was also the day of the first symbolic Ingenuity flight. Okay? That date was exactly 9 years, and 9 years is very prophetic because the number 9 is the most important number in God's big picture of signs, which is only being explained on this channel as the number 9 from the Bible is symbolic of judgment. This was exactly 9 years after Biden's emergency landing in California, which is Kamala Harris is from. She was the senator from California, due to a bird strike. Okay, Biden was the vice president at the time. Kamala Harris is the vice president. Biden made an emergency landing in California. She was the senator from California due to a bird strike, and Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash due to a bird strike, which is why the connection here is exactly 9 years before she was in the High Point with the electric bus company. Okay, and this date that she was in High Point was exactly 69 weeks, which hints at the most central prophecy in the Bible, the 70 weeks prophecy. that includes a 69-week period followed by the 70th week, which refers or regards the period of the Antichrist and the end times. So that's why God uses 69 weeks in his connections from that prophecy. 69 weeks is in the prophecy. And so anyway, the day that she was in high point was exactly 69 weeks after 9 earthquakes in 24 hours in California, where she is from. She was actually the senator at the time. On Christmas Eve to Christmas morning. The 24-hour period went from Christmas Eve into Christmas morning. On the same day that an Indian American died, when an old growth tree in the Bible, trees falling are symbolism for judgment on the people. This was an old growth tree, been around since perhaps the beginning of the country, symbolic of the country, in other words. It was in a national park, furthermore, more national symbolism, okay? So anyway, on this same Christmas morning day, the Indian American died when an old growth tree fell on him. But he was an Indian American, and of course, Kamala Harris is of Indian descent. He was pronounced dead 23 minutes after the call to 9/11. 23 minutes and 9 earthquakes gives us a pairing of 9 and 23, which confirms the signs and connections. So the April 19th date in 2021, the day that she was in high point, is 9/11, is 911 days to October 17th. That's astounding. That's astounding. I forgot that. I forgot about that. Wow, wow, wow. And it also connects with the 9/11 call, actually. Whoa, whoa. Wow. Okay. But anyway, to the April 19th date, we have the 9 years and then the 69 weeks to the 9 earthquakes. And again, the number 9 is the number that symbolizes judgment. This is a news story, a national news story, because of the 9 earthquakes in 24 hours. All right. The day that Martin Luther King was shot on April 4th, 1968 is just 2 days more than 1,260 days, which is 60 plus 60 plus 60 weeks after Harris's birth on October 20th, 1964. The day that Martin Luther King was shot on April 4th, 1968 was the date of the release of the classic comedy movie, The Party, with Peter Sellers. Sellers plays an Indian guy, and one of the main comedy scenes is the bird he feeds. Birdie Num-Nums. I just watched the scene again and laughed so hard I cried, which hints at the bird strike of the plane of Harris, who is of Indian descent. Believe it or not, I was thinking of this movie that led to the above connection regarding to James Earl Jones. Yeah, what I'm saying here is that how all of this was discovered regarding James Earl Jones was because of the movie that I was thinking about. In other words, I must have been inspired by the Holy Spirit. And so I looked it up and discovered that it was the date that Martin Luther King was shot. But then I realized that the movie is about this Indian guy, and Kamala Harris is of Indian descent. The movie Party, if you don't know it, it's from the 1970s, or maybe, I think it's the late 60s. But it is my favorite comedy of all time. I don't watch movies anymore, but this is my favorite movie, favorite comedy movie. It is hilarious, and it's not bad humor either. It's not sinful humor either. It's a movie you can watch, in my opinion. So. But anyway, this is astounding. God has used the movie The Party with the Indian guy. Peter Sellers plays an Indian guy. You wouldn't get away with that today because, of course, Peter Sellers is a white person. But this is just amazing. And it connects to Kamala Harris clearly because, again, I already established that Kamala Harris connects with 42 months to the prophetic day of James Earl Ray. And so we have this other connection too with Peter Sellers here, with James Earl Ray shooting Martin Luther King on the state. Yeah, it's amazing. April 20th, 1968 was 4 times 4 days after Martin Luther King was shot by James Earl Ray on the date 4/4. And furthermore, again, it was 4 days before he was caught. God uses records, and so the funniest movie ever is used in his signs. Again, the reason why this is the prophetic date, which again is exactly 42 months after Harris's birth, is because this was the day that he was identified and put on the list, which made it 11 people on the list, which was the only second time in history that that was done. And the 10 most wanted list. And again, the 53 years connection also, because it was 53,000 people in the database. Yeah. And God uses records. And so the funniest movie ever is used in his signs. That's my joke, but maybe it is. Maybe God has my sense of humor, or or shares what I know about it being the funniest movie ever. Because God does use records in his signs. And so this is the funniest movie ever. And so therefore, there you go. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video. And once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more. Don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the BitChute.com or the Odyssey.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.